I now see the path to our glorious return to power.
If Zira were put on trial for all the bad things she did in The Lion King 2, how long do you think her prison sentence would be? Would she be locked away for life? Or maybe a few hundred years? Zira wasn't just a villain in the classic sense. She was a lioness who lived for revenge, manipulated her own kids, and caused chaos in the Pride Lands.
What have I told you about them?
I'm sorry, Mother. She didn't seem so bad.
Zira wasn't always filled with hatred. She was born during Mufasa's rule, a time when the Pride Lands were beautiful and peaceful. But life wasn't easy for her. She wasn't the strongest or fastest lioness in the Pride. Compared to someone like Nala, who was an incredible hunter, Zira felt weak and invisible. She wanted more. She wanted to be someone important, someone powerful. Everything changed when Scar became king. After Mufasa's tragic death, Scar took over, and the Pride Lands became a very different place.
I'd hate to be responsible for the death of a family member.
For most of the lionesses, it was a disaster, but for Zira, it was an opportunity. Scar brought hyenas into the Pride Lands and created new rules. Suddenly, Zira saw a chance to prove herself. Zira wasn't just loyal to Scar, she worshipped him. She believed in him with all her heart. Scar noticed her devotion, especially when she defended him against anyone who dared to speak out. This made her feel special, like she finally had a purpose. Scar gave her a sense of importance that she never had felt before. And then, Scar made her son, Kovu, his heir. Imagine that!
Kovu. Scar wasn't even his father. He just took him in. Oh, hey, Tawny. Where's little termite Kovu?
Her own son was going to be king. For Zira, this wasn't just a victory, it was everything. Scar wasn't just her leader, he was her world. But then Simba came back. The rightful king returned, defeated Scar, and took back the throne.
No, you don't understand. No, I didn't mean... No, I didn't... No!
For Zira, it was like her entire world was ripped apart. Scar was gone, and everything she had worked for was destroyed. After Scar's defeat, Simba didn't just take the throne. He exiled Zira and her followers to the Outlands, a harsh and unforgiving place. The Outlands weren't like the Pride Lands. They were dry, rocky, and had very little food or water. It was a miserable place to live, but Zira didn't care. She wasn't thinking about her comfort. All she could think about was revenge. For years, Zira planned her comeback. She trained Kovu to be a killer, shaping him into the perfect weapon to take down Simba. She told him over and over again that it was his destiny to rule the Pride Lands. To Zira, Kovu wasn't just her son. He was her last chance to keep Scar's legacy alive. Conspiracy to commit murder carries a penalty of 20 years to life.
What is your destiny? I will avenge Scar. Take his place in the Pride Lands. Yes. What have I taught you? Simba is the enemy.
But Kovu wasn't like her. He had a heart. And when he met Kiara, Simba's daughter, everything changed. Kiara showed him kindness, and for the first time, Kovu began to question everything his mother had taught him. This betrayal drove Zira mad. She felt like she was losing everything all over again. When Nuka died during a failed ambush on Simba, Zira blamed Kovu. In her rage, she slashed his face, leaving him with the scar that mirrored Scar's. Zira didn't just cross a line. She blew past it like a lioness on a mission to ruin everything in her path.
I humbly ask to join your pride.
No! You were banished with the other outsiders.
I have left the outsiders. I'm a rogue.
And when it comes to crimes, she has a long list. Zira didn't just love her kids in a normal, healthy way. Nope, she saw them as tools. Take Kovu, for example. He wasn't just her son, he was her secret weapon. Zira trained Kovu from a young age to become the perfect assassin, drilling into his head that his life's purpose was to take down Simba. Imagine being told by your own mom that you're not here to live your life, make friends, or chase butterflies. You're here to kill the king. Talk about pressure.
Yeah.
For child abuse and neglect, Zira would face 10 to 20 years in prison per child under US law. The emotional and physical harm caused to Novu, Nuka, and Vitani could result in a combined sentence of 30 to 60 years. But it wasn't just mental abuse, there was physical harm too. Remember when Zira gave Kovu that scar across his eye? She didn't do it by accident. She was angry, furious actually, because one of her plans failed, and she needed someone to blame. Poor Kovu just happened to be standing in her way. That scar wasn't just a mark on his face, it was a constant reminder of Zira's control over him.
What have you done?
I didn't mean to. It wasn't my fault. I did nothing.
Which brings us to Nuka. Zira ignored him most of the time, making it clear that Kovu was her favorite. Nuka spent his whole life trying to prove himself to his mother, desperate for her approval. But when he finally tried to show he was brave enough to attack Simba, things went horribly wrong. Nuka ended up getting crushed under a pile of logs. It was heartbreaking. And did you know what Zira did? She blamed Kovu. Instead of mourning Nuka or admitting her plan was flawed, she turned her rage on Kovu again. While Zira didn't directly cause Nuka's death, her negligence and obsession with revenge played a major role. Negligent homicide could lead to a sentence of 5 to 10 years.
Nuka is dead because of you! No. You've killed your own brother!
No!
Vitani, Zira's daughter, didn't escape unscathed either. Zira raised her to be tough and loyal, but it was clear that Vitani's role in the family was more about following orders than being loved. Zira's way of parenting was toxic, turning her children into pawns in her endless game of revenge. But Zira's crimes didn't stop with her family. She had much bigger plans that nearly brought the Pride Lands to war. Zira wasn't content with sitting in the Outlands, plotting in secret. Oh no, she wanted action. Her ultimate goal was to overthrow Simba and take over the Pride Lands, and she wasn't afraid to get her paws dirty. One of Zira's most dramatic moves was the ambush on Simba. She waited for the perfect moment, thinking her plan was foolproof.
Why, Simba?
Zira.
What are you doing out here and so alone?
But as we saw, everything fell apart. The ambush failed, and Simba escaped. Worse, this attack cost Nuka his life. Attempted murder could result in 10 to 30 years in prison, given the premeditation and high risk to Simba's life. Did that stop Zira? Not even close. If anything, it made her even angrier. Instead of stepping back and thinking about what went wrong, Zira doubled down. She gathered her pride and prepared for an all-out war against Simba and his lions. Her obsession with revenge had completely taken over her. She wasn't thinking about what was best for her pride or her family. She only cared about making Simba pay. Her hatred blinded her to everything else, and in the end, it hurt her own pride as much as her enemies. Incitement to violence or war could result in 5 to 15 years.
If you will not fight, then you will die as well. Where are you going?
The final battle was intense, the kind of showdown that could have changed the Pride Lands forever. Lions from both sides charged at each other, claws and teeth ready. It wasn't just a fight, it was chaos. But right in the middle of all the roaring and fighting, two voices stood out. Kiara, Simba's daughter, and Kovu. They stepped forward and begged everyone to stop. Kiara spoke about how the fighting wasn't helping anyone, and how they could all come together as one pride. For a moment, it seemed like her words worked. The fighting slowed, and peace actually felt possible. But Zira didn't care about peace. She wasn't ready to forgive or forget. Even when her own lion started to question her, she refused to let go of her hatred. In a fit of rage, she lunged at Simba, determined to end it all once and for all. She wanted to kill him so badly that she didn't think about what she was doing. But instead of Simba, she ended up clashing with Kiara. The two lionesses tumbled over the edge of a cliff. Logs from a broken dam rushed below them. Kiara tried to save Zira, offering her a chance to climb back up and live. But Zira's anger was too strong. She refused the help and, in the end, fell to her death.
Zira, come on! I'll help you.
Coming to Kovu and his scar, that mark across his face wasn't just a random injury. It had a deeper meaning. In the world of the Lion King, a scar across the eye is more than a wound. It's a symbol, and it's not a good one. Scar had the same kind of mark, and it became a part of his dark, evil legacy. When Zira slashed Kovu's face in anger, she wasn't just trying to hurt him. She might have been trying to send a message. Maybe she thought the scar would make Kovu more like Scar. In her mind, giving Kovu that mark could have been a way to force him to embrace his destiny of taking down Simba. It's a twisted thought, but Zira wasn't exactly known for thinking things through. Here's the thing though, the scar didn't make Kovu evil. It didn't turn him into a villain or make him follow Zira's plans. Instead, the scar became a symbol of Kovu's struggle. Every time he looked at it, it reminded him of what he didn't want to become. He didn't want to be like Scar or Zira. He didn't want to live a life full of anger and revenge. Kovu wanted to be his own lion, to choose his own path. The scar wasn't a mark of evil for him. It was a reminder of the strength it took to break free from Zira's control. So while Zira thought the scar would make Kovu more like Scar, it actually did the opposite. It pushed Kovu to be better, to rise above his past, and to choose love and peace over hatred. In the end, that scar became a part of Kovu's story, but it didn't define him. Instead, it became proof that he could overcome the darkness and find his own light.
Not going anywhere.
Then you have sentenced us to death.
Then so be it.
The idea of Scar being connected to evil shows up again in The Lion Guard. In the series, we see Kion, Simba's son, get a scar just like Kovu's. But Kion's scar had a very different backstory. It wasn't caused by claws. It came from a venomous snake bite. And it wasn't just a physical wound. The venom in the bite had magical effects that messed with Kion's mind. It made him lose control of his sense of right and wrong, pushing him toward dangerous decisions. When you think about it, it's interesting to wonder if Zira was trying to copy this idea with Kovu. Maybe she thought that by giving him a scar, it would somehow have the same effect, turning him into someone who couldn't tell good from bad and pushing him closer to Scar's path. But the thing is, Zira didn't fully understand how that magic worked. She wasn't using a venomous snake or some mystical force. She was just acting out of anger, desperation, and her own twisted beliefs. Now, here's the big question. Was Zira truly evil, or was she just shaped by Scar's influence? Scar played a massive role in turning Zira into who she became. When Zira felt like she didn't matter, Scar gave her a sense of purpose. He made her feel powerful and important, something she had never felt before. But his gift came with a price. He filled her mind with ideas of revenge and hatred. He taught her to see enemies everywhere and to cling to his vision even after he was gone.
So it is with a heavy heart that I assume the throne.
When Scar died, Zira didn't just lose a leader. She lost a person who made her feel like she had meaning. She couldn't let go of his memory because, without him, she didn't know who she was anymore. She held on to Scar's dreams so tightly that they became her own. In a lot of ways, Zira was a victim of her own insecurities. She wasn't born evil. She was shaped by Scar's manipulation and her own need to feel valued. But her loyalty to Scar binded her to everything else, including her children. She couldn't see how much she was hurting them or how much she was hurting herself. But that doesn't mean she didn't have a choice. Zira made her own decisions, and those decisions hurt a lot of people, including her own family. Her grief over Nuka's death showed that she wasn't completely heartless, but her refusal to change or let go of her hatred sealed her fate. Now, think of it like this. Zira in a courtroom, standing trial for everything she did in The Lion King 2. The crimes? Oh, there's a list as long as Scar's shadow. Child abuse? Check. Conspiracy? Big check. Attempted murder? Oh, you better believe that's on there too. If lions had a justice system, Zira wouldn't be just facing a slap on the paw. She'd be looking at a sentence so long, she'd need 9 lives to serve it. Zira didn't just fail as a parent, she weaponized her kids. Kovu wasn't raised with love or care. Nope, he was trained like a soldier from the moment he could roar. His entire childhood was about one thing: learning to kill Simba. That's not parenting, that's turning your cub into a weapon. Imagine if a human mom did that. She'd be in handcuffs faster than you could say Hakuna Matata. And then there's Nuka. Poor, desperate Nuka. He spent his whole life trying to get Zira's approval, but she never gave him the time of day. The one time he tried to prove himself, climbing that dam to attack Simba, ended in tragedy. And instead of mourning him, Zira used his death as an excuse to lash out at Kovu. Can you imagine being blamed for your sibling's death when all you did was exist? Next, conspiracy. Zira's whole life was one big revenge plot. She didn't just hate Simba, she wanted him dead, and she planned every detail of her attacks. From training Kovu to ambushing Simba, Zira's schemes were the kind of things that would get you locked up for life in the human world. Zira tried to kill Simba multiple times, not to mention all the other lions caught in the crossfire. If this was a human court, she'd be looking at a long, long sentence. When you add it all up, Zira's looking at a sentence of at least 200 years. And honestly, that's being pretty nice. In reality, she'd probably never get out of prison.
Attack!
She'd spend the rest of her life thinking about what she'd done. But here's where things get tricky. Should we take Zira's backstory into account? She wasn't always like this. Scar manipulated her, made her feel important, and gave her a purpose. When she lost him, she was abandoned and left to survive in the harsh outlands. Does that excuse her actions? Definitely not. Hurting others isn't okay, no matter what. Still, it's worth asking, would you give Zira a shorter sentence because of her struggles? Or are her crimes so serious that they outweigh any pain she went through? It's a tough question, and one that makes you think about whether people, or lions, can ever really be forgiven for the bad things they do. Even though Zira is gone, her actions left a scar on the Pride Lands, literally and figuratively. Kovu didn't choose to be Scar's heir or Zira's pawn. He was born into it. But now, as the future king of the Pride Lands, he has to deal with the consequences of Zira's obsession. Think about it. Kovu had a scar on his face, just like Scar. To the lions in the Pride Lands, that scar is more than just a mark. It's a reminder of Scar's dark legacy. Some lions might look at Kovu and see a hero, someone who overcame his past to embrace the light. But others, they might see Scar's shadow. They might wonder if Kovu is truly trustworthy or if Zira's teachings still linger in his heart.
I'm sorry, Mother. I tried.
As king, Kovu will have to work twice as hard to prove himself. He'll need to show the Pride Lands that he's not his mother, and he's not defined by his past. That's a lot for one lion to carry, but if anyone can do it, it's Kovu. Zira's story is a cautionary tale about the dangers of hatred and revenge. She was so consumed by her need to destroy Simba that she destroyed herself in the process. But her story also teaches us about redemption and forgiveness. Kovu's journey shows that you don't have to be trapped by your past. He broke free from Zira's control, chose love over hatred, and found a new path. And then there's Vitani, who stepped away from her mother's toxic influence and joined the Pride Landers. Even Zira's pride realized in the end that unity was better than division. The biggest lesson here? Hate gets you nowhere. If Zira had let go of her anger and embraced peace, she could have lived a happy life with her family. Instead, her obsession with revenge destroyed everything. So what's the verdict? Is Zira a villain beyond redemption, or is she a tragic figure shaped by Scar's manipulation and her own insecurities? On one hand, Zira made her choices. She hurt her kids, plotted against Simba, and led Pride into war. Those actions have consequences, and Zira paid the ultimate price for her mistakes. But on the other hand, it's hard not to feel a little sorry for her. Zira wasn't born evil. She was a lioness who wanted to matter, who found purpose in Scar's twisted vision, and who couldn't let go of her grief when Scar was gone. Her story is one of pain, loss, and misguided loyalty. In the end, Zira is a mix of both. A villain who committed terrible crimes, but also a tragic figure who couldn't escape her own past. Now it's your turn. What do you think? If Zira were on trial, would you throw the book at her, or would you show her mercy? Let us know in the comments below.